Yep, it started now, Satya.
Thanks, hey everyone. Welcome to our group D365 using India. Today's session number 24. We are having Komi with us, who will be talking about uh, introduction to Microsoft D365 FinOps development. So today the agenda will be basically in three parts. Basically, that's my agenda. Komi has his own agenda. So we'll start with the group introduction and what we're going to do in today's session and then upcoming sessions. All right, so your group, basically, we are three people. Rachit is our founding member. And so if you want to connect with us on LinkedIn, if you're not already connected on LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube, so feel free to scan these barcodes. I'll stay here for another few seconds. You can connect with us there. So right now we are like more than 800 members globally, and we are increasing day by day. Thanks to Umesh, who is very active on adding our team members here. And we're also inviting people who want to join as volunteers from India or from anywhere, basically, who wants to volunteer in this group and contribute to the community. Okay, I will move on. All right, so if you are with us on YouTube, you should be able to watch all of our past sessions. So you can see all the sessions from the past in last 1.5 years we have in this group, and all the sessions are on YouTube now. All right, now I would like to hand over to Komi, who is joining us from Nigeria. Yeah, Komi, welcome to the group.
All right, thank you very much, Saita. Welcome everyone um, to today's session. And my name is Komi Siali.
All right, good. So as part of the first thing we have to discuss, we have the LCS. So the LCS is actually the starting point whenever we're trying to implement the Dynamics 365 finance and operation application. So the very first thing we do is we go for demo, we demo the system to the client, and when they are okay with it, we purchase a license for the implementation. Now, when that is done, we can access our LCS project by going to lcs.dynamics.com. So here, I've been able to create a project. And when I open the project, so here, we should be able to see the different environment that have been assigned to the client. By default, Microsoft gives us two environments. One, which is the UAT environment, which we use for our testing. Then the other one is the production environment. Now, before now, it used to be three. A third one was added, which the developer is going to use to make any customizations that is needed. But Microsoft took that out. Before we can do anything customization, we need to deploy our own environment, which we call the cloud hosted environment. So when I come to this hamburger menu here, and I click on cloud hosted environment, I would see where I can deploy my environment. So here we need to have access to an Azure subscription before we can do this deployment. So I've done this before now, and I can access the environment using the remote desktop. So when I scroll down here, I have the details. And of course, these details are available to me because I have access to the LCS project. We have other things we can do here on the LCS project that I will talk about in a nutshell. So just come back to the slide. Okay. So with LCS, we can manage the whole implementation. So like I said earlier, it is the starting point, and LCS is very important throughout the life cycle of the implementations. So there we have to do what if we want to apply any package on the system, we need to make use of the LCS environment to upload our deployable package, to apply them. We can also see the different packages that have been applied on the environment. Now, before we proceed, I'll just give a little bit of breakdown about the Dynamics ecosystem. So like I said, this course is for starters that are looking into coming to development for D365 FinOps. So in Dynamics, we have other applications like the customer insights, we have the sales, we have the customer service, and we have the FinOps app. So we are interested in the FinOps app. The FinOps app is further broken down into workloads or apps, and there we hear talk about Dynamics 365 Finance, Dynamics 365 Human Resources, Dynamics 365 Project Operations, Dynamics 365 Commerce. All of these are all encompassed into the Finance and Operation app. So when somebody says, I want to deploy Dynamics 365 Finance, it is not actually a separate app that you are deploying. All right, so LCS, what can we do with LCS? So on LCS, we can access our environment. I would come back to the page. So this cloud hosted environment, for instance, I can decide to see other details about this environment. So I can just go up here and I say full details. So this is the same thing I'm going to do if I have my UAT environment or if I have my production environment. All right. Now, how do I log on to my development environment? I would simply download the remote desktop here. I click on this to download it. Then I'm going to log in with the credentials that I have here. So let's quickly connect. Now, another way of assessing a development environment is using what we call the VHD. So it's a downloadable VHD that we can download on our system locally, and we can always connect to it. So this environment that I'm accessing currently, this one is hosted on Azure because I needed to add an Azure subscription before I could access the environment. All right, so let's search the environment. Good. So while that is loading, I will come back to the environment page. So here we can do things like applying package on the environment. We can do other things like restarting some services also on this environment page. So some of the services we can restart are things like the finance and operation app services. We can also restart things like the data management workspace framework service, the financial reporting service. Here we can also move database. We can put the environment on maintenance mode. If we want to do things like turning on our account structures, we can turn off the maintenance mode, and we can also enable the maintenance mode from the environment LCS page. Okay, so I spoke about moving database. We can apply our updates. We can also track milestones. So here, when I come back to the home page here on the LCS page, for a real-life scenario implementations, we have a full methodology here where we can see our analysis phase, our design phase, development phase, and the operate phase. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the architecture of the Dynamics 365 FO deployment. We can have a cloud-hosted environment, a cloud deployment rather, and we can also have an on-premises deployment. So when I talk about cloud, everything is being managed by Microsoft, the infrastructure. So in that case, we have FinOps as a SaaS, a software as a service. Then for the on-premises, The client is responsible of purchasing the infrastructures, and the partner or the consultant will then do the deployment from end to end. So let's do a little bit of comparison between the cloud and the on-premises. So like I said earlier, Microsoft is the one that manages everything. The application lifecycle is managed via LCS, like I showed earlier. Even for the on-prem, we can also use LCS to manage our deployments, like applying our packages. For the on-prem, for instance, we need to use our local agents to talk to LCS and our on-premises deployment. With the cloud, Microsoft is responsible to apply all the packages for us on our environment. Sometimes we are forced to make sure that we are up to date with the one version that Microsoft brought out a few years ago. Then for the on-premises, we need to plan when we should apply our packages. We also have the option of hybrid, where some clients said they want to deploy finance on cloud and the human resource should be deployed on premises. So that can also be achieved. Now, let's come to the development tools that we have when it comes to Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation. So I've been able to log on to my development environment. This is what it looks like. All right, so here I can launch my Visual Studio. So the IDE that we use to develop FinOps is Visual Studio. And immediately I deploy this VM, it comes with Visual Studio, which I can launch here. And I'm going to run it as administrator. Okay. So I want to go back to the slide. Okay. I think this is, let me start this. Good. I'm sharing my screen back just shortly. Okay, good. All right, so like I said earlier, Visual Studio is the integrated development environment, or the IDE that is used for developing finance and operation. And we can link our development environment to Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps is the tools that we use to keep our code and to manage our customizations. There have been instances where partners complain that they lost code of their customizations. That has happened to me also, because we're not making use of the Azure DevOps. We have to lose some client code that we have to rework from the beginning. So it's very essential that as a developer, we make use of the Azure DevOps to manage our code. So with Azure DevOps, we can get latest code, we can resolve our conflicts, we can perform builds with our Visual Studio, we can apply our packages using LCS, like I said earlier. And also, so with the Azure DevOps, we can create our deployable package using what we call the build agent. Even aside that, we can also create deployable package right from Visual Studio as well, even though that is not recommended. And Microsoft applies updates to production environments in the cloud. So we have a sequence of applying packages to our production environment. When the developer does anything on a dev environment, it needs to be applied to the test environment, tested, and the package needs to be marked as a release candidate before it can be applied to the production environment. So I will take us back to Visual Studio. Let's have a quick run through of the tools that we can use in Visual Studio to manage our development when it comes to finance and operation. I think I'm sharing the wrong one. Okay, good. So this is Visual Studio. And here I have extension. Then under extension, I have Dynamics 365. When you install your ordinary, your basic Visual Studio, you don't have this extension. But because we are deploying this for 365 development, we have this section where we can do things like creating our packages. Here we can create models. I will talk about what models are in a jiffy. And here we can build our database. We can synchronize our database. We can build our models, and we can also make use of the data search that I will look at shortly. So I'll come back to the slide. All right. So we have few concepts when we are developing F&O. We have elements. Elements are the basic things that we make use of. And we have things like our tables, our forms, our EDTs. We make use of projects to manage our elements, which we also call objects. Then models are used to group our objects. So the concept that Microsoft used for this is we have a model, and inside these models, we have objects. Then we have a package. The package can contain one or more models, and these packages are what we are going to apply on our UAT environment and also apply them on the production. Are we together?
Yeah.
Good.
All good.
Okay. So I spoke about model. Now, how do I know the models that are available on the system? We make use of the Application Explorer or the AOT Explorer. So when I launch this, I can see the different models that are available on the system. On the AOT here, we can see both models and our objects. So I have an object called data type. So inside this data type node, we have the base new model, we have the base extension model, objects rather. Then in the data model, we have other objects like the table objects, the view objects, the query objects. When I expand the base enum node, I have ABC, which is an object that belongs to application platform model. So basically, the model stands like a folder in which we have different objects.
That's what he said, what he's supposed to.
So currently, what I'm looking at here, I can switch from classic view to model view. What the model view does is gives me all the models that are available on the system. And these are all the models that came out of the box. So I would simply go to application suite, for instance. Then inside application suite, I can see my object element. When I come to data model, I have the tables. So I'll expand this. Then this displays all the tables that are available in the application suite model. All right. So to create a model, I would come to Dynamics 365 model management. Then I click on create model. Why am I creating a model? Any customization that has to be done needs to be done in a custom model because Microsoft doesn't allow you to use out-of-the-box model to do any customization. So that is the reason why I would have to create a new model. So I'm going to create a model as an example here. Click on E365 model management, and I say create model. So I will call this KWS. Now, when creating a model, we have the option to reference Microsoft models. Basically, what we're trying to do is we are trying to extend or build upon what Microsoft has already built. So it's logical to reference some of the models that are available out of the box. So I click on next, and all of these models that I'm seeing here are shown here. So one of the basic one we pick is application suite. So I click application suite model, then I click on next. So here it tells me create a new project. I'm just going to uncheck this. Then when we talk about the project and solution creation, we can come back to create project. So I click on next. So having done this, when I refresh this, I should be able to find my own model created among these ones. So I search for KWS, then you can see that I have my model created here. But when I search through all these object elements, I won't see anything because I haven't added any object yet to my model. Another thing I want to be aware of is when I create my models, they are all stored on the system as folders. So when you come to this PC, service volume, then I come to AOS service, package local directory. So here, all the models are stored somewhere here. So let's look for KWS. You can see that my model has been created here. So in a nutshell, any object we are creating are being stored as XML files on the system. So back to my slide, AOT element. AOT simply stands for application object 3. And that is what I showed earlier. So some of those objects that we have there, we have the extended data type, which actually serves as primitive data type in Phoenix development. So we have primitive type like Boolean, dates, integer, real, string. What this means is whenever I'm creating a field, I would have to specify the field type. So it could be Boolean, it could be date, it could be unknown, so on and so forth. Simple example, back to Visual Studio. I'm going to change the AOT view from model view back to classic. So I would pick an EDT for instance. So I want to see the type of EDT I have here. I would right click on this ABC model type and I say properties. So on the right hand side here, I can see the properties of this EDT here. So we have base enumerations. Base enum simply stands like options. They are like object type that give us different options that we can pick from. So I could have a base enum that says ABC, for instance. And when I expand this, I said open designer. Now, we also have the designer in our Visual Studio. Like you can see here, the designer helps us to model our objects. So here I have the enum that has different options, known, A, B, and C. And I can see the labels or the name that's been given to this particular option. So we'll be creating our own enum shortly. and see how we can use the designer to model our enum object. Okay, so let's go back to an EDT. I opened it in the designer, then I have some properties here. So one of the basic things we do when we create an element is to make sure that we assign a label to it. We also assign an enum type if there is need to. And also we can define if these enum type are going to be mandatory or not. And we can define all of these when we add these fields on a table. Okay, so we can also extend Microsoft base enums. So Microsoft says, if you want to work on this application, you don't have to destroy what I have done, but then you can extend it. So say, for instance, I have this enum, which is ABC, that is used somewhere on the system, and I need to add a fifth option called D. I would have to extend the enum before I can add that. And to know if an enum can be extended, this property here that says it's extensible has to be set to true. So if there is need for me to extend it, Microsoft says, yes, this is actually extendable. We'll talk about extensions later. We have much time for that. Now, let's quickly look at tables. So like we all know, for any software applications, we make use of tables to store our data. So on the AOT, our tables also serves as objects. So when I come to data model, tables, I can see the different tables that are available for me. I pick cost table, for instance. So cost table is meant to store customer data on the system. I open design, click on the open designer, and here I have different fields that are available in this table. The good things about development with FinOps is to create fields, we don't need to write code to create fields. We can simply use the graphical interface we have here, right click, then we can add fields. So when I right click on the field node here and I say new, you can see the different EDTs that I spoke about earlier. So here I have to define the field type, if it's a string, if it's an integer, so on and so forth. Now, when I'm on the table node itself, I have some properties here, like the label. The label simply tells me what the table is all about. And I also have things like title field 1, title field 2, which is useful when we are displaying or we are adding this table on a form. Then on the table itself, we can also specify the primary index. We can specify if the table is a temp table or is a regular table. So we have three types of table in 365 F&O. So based on what we want to use that table for, we can define the table type. This helps us to define the performance of the system. Then here we have field groups. Field groups is simply helping us to well arrange our fields when they are displayed on the form to the users. Then we have indexes. So indexes help us to better query the database. Then we have relations. Relations help us to define relationship between one table and another. Then we have delete actions. Delete actions are actually used to maintain data integrity. So say, for instance, I have a parent table and I have a child table. I can tell the system that when you are deleting record from a child table, it should make sure that the record in the parent should not be deleted. So we can define all of this using our delete actions. Then for state machine, we use state machine for our workflows. Then methods, then we have event. So method can be defined on tables, and method can also be defined on classes. We'll talk about this later. So that's that about tables. And we can also browse our tables to see records that are in them. So this cost table, for instance, I can right click on the cost table and say open table browser. So this is going to open the table for me and show me the records that are available in this table. So this helps the developer to make sure that when I'm building, I have some records that I can test with. Okay, so I'm having this error because Internet Explorer is kind of obsolete, so we can use other browser to view our table browser. Are we together?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Good. So that's that about tables. To create tables, we make use of the designer, and I spoke about some of the properties of the table already, and I said the indexes are needed for speedy access and uniqueness to the database. We use this to define relationships, delete actions to make sure that we have data integrity. State machines are used for workflows. We have method and event, then we have the map as well. So I've shown us this already. So to add a field to the table, we can use our graphical interface to either say new, or we can drag and drop our EDTs. So the basic thing that we should do, if I'm creating a table and fields, it's advisable to use EDT first. So why am I using EDTs? I could have a field called customer ID, right? So I will create an ID called customer ID where I will specify all the properties, the length of the field, the label, if it's going to be mandatory or not. Then I can easily drag and drop that EDT into my table. So an example is this. I can drag this and drop it here. So doing that, I'm automatically creating a field on the cost table. So here are other details about the relation. So when I'm creating relations, there are some properties that I need to take into consideration. Say, for instance, this is the cost table. The cost table has a relationship with the bank account table. So here I can define the table that I want to relate cost table with. So here you have related table, which is cost bank accounts. Then inside of the relation itself, we will define the fields and their related fields. So we have some methods that are standard methods that come with our tables. So we have methods like delete, insert, merge, update. So what this does is when I'm inserting a table, for instance, the system should perform a set of code on that particular table. So these tables here can either be extended with our extensibility functionality on F&O. All right, so I would like us to create a table, then we'll move to queries. This is my first time doing a development in 365. The very first thing I need to do is to create a model. So I think we've already created a model. Now, we say that we can use our project to manage our objects. So I'm going to create a project right away and create objects inside that project. To create a project, I will simply come to File, click on New, and I click on Projects. So I would have to specify the project type. So my project type is going to be finance and operation. So this is my first time creating projects on this environment. So what I will do is to search for finance. Yeah, so I have finance and operation. So we have 3 types. So this is the one for customization. Here, if we want to create our best practice rule, we can use this. And if we want to develop some add-ins, we can make use of this one. So what I'm interested in now is the finance and operation. I click on next. So here I can define the name of the project. So I'll call this my first project. Then I can define the location. What I like to do normally is to create a folder on the drive C, so I can easily access the project. So here I'll create D365FO, which I'm going to select here. Good. Then I would say create. So every project belongs to a model. So here you can see I have my project, then I have the name of the model. I can update the name of the model from the property here. So I have a model, I can say, okay, instead of KWS, I want to use the fleet management model. Now, this is very important because the project and the object that I want to work on, they both have to belong to the same model. What do I mean by that? This project is in fleet management, and this object here is application foundation. So how do I move the object into the project? I will right click, then I say add to project. This is grayed out. Reason being they belong to 2 different models. So let's look for objects that belong to fleet management. One of the things that the AOT search help us do, we can easily locate objects that belongs to the same model. I can either come through the model view and scroll down to fleet management. So I'm going to expand this fleet management model node. Then I come to data type, for instance. Let's move to extended data type. And I have FM address. Let's see if we can add this. I right click. You will see that the add to project is enabled. Now, let's say I want to use my own model. So I will simply update this back to KWS so we can create our own objects. So we spoke about EDTs. I want to create an EDT. To create an element in our object, in our project rather, we right click on the project and we'll say add new item. Click on new item. And here we have different type of objects, just like we have them on the AOT. They show up here when you are creating a new object. So I click on data type and I want to create a new EDT. So we have different type of editing, whether it is enum, it is date, it is string. Here I want to create a string EDT. So I call this KWS trainer training type. Then I say add. So here I have my first EDT created. And here I can define some properties on the EDT. I want to define a label, so I call this trainer type. The string size by default is 10. I can make it 20. Okay, so now I want to create a table. I right click on my project, I say add new item, then come to data model, come to table, then I call this KWS training. Now I'm putting KWS because that is the naming convention that I chose to use, right? I can just make it trainings. So I click on add, then voila, so I have my table, which currently is empty. So I want to add a field to this table. I can say add new string, and then I would edit this by double clicking on this, or on the properties, I can come to the name and say trainer. So I just created a field of type string and I named it trainer. I want to also add a field here called trainer type. I already created an EDT. I can click on new string, call this trainer type. Then I want my field to inherit all the properties of this EDT. So what I will do is I will scroll down, then I will come to the property extended data type. On the drop down here, I can filter for my EDT called KWS trainer type. Now, this automatically is inheriting the string size property because this one I gave it 20. Another way of creating this same field is simply by dragging and dropping here. Let's see what happens. You can see that it automatically comes with the same name of the EDT. So having done that, I just created a table and I've been able to add up to 3 different fields. 2 of them have an EDT and 1 of them doesn't have. So when you come for the trainer, for instance, there is no extended data type here. Okay, now let's move to queries. Queries are also objects that we have on the application object 3. I'm going to switch this back to classic view. Then I come to data model. Then I have queries somewhere here. So what query does, basically, it helps us to filter data on tables. All right. So we can create queries in 2 different ways. We can either create them from our designer, or we can also create queries using classes. So what I'm doing now is to create our queries using the designer. So to add a new query to my table, I would click on add new item query. So here I say KWS training. Then I click on add. So like I said earlier, we're using the queries to filter data. So I need to specify from which table am I filtering the data. So in that case, our tables become what we'll call data sources. So I can right click, new data source, or I can drag and drop. Like I said earlier, it's quite fun and easy. So I can drag the table and drop it here. So automatically, my query has a data source called KWS training. And when I expand the field node, I should be able to see the field that I created here. Now I need to do one more thing before they'll be available. On the data source properties, I have the dynamic fields. So here I have to select this from unselected to yes. By doing that, we have some fields that are added here. And if you notice, I have more fields than what I have available on the original table, which is here. So here I have 3, and I have other fields here. So I have the fields data area ID, the partition, the rec ID, the rec version. These are system tables that we use for some validations of to query some data in the system. The rec ID, for instance, it's a system generated record for everything that we're creating on the system. Then the data area ID represents the legal entity or the company in which we are in. Now, let me show us the system. I just want to show a little bit of what the ERP itself looks like. Because for me to be able to customize, I need to see the UI parts of what I'm customizing, right? So let's log on to our environment here. So like I said earlier, FinOps is a cloud-hosted environment and which is a web app. So we can access it using a URL and using our Office 365 account. All right, so this is what the system looks like. And all the objects that I showed us on Visual Studio, when you break them together, we have something like this, and we can easily identify the portion of the system that we would like to customize. Okay. So we've talked about queries. Now forms. So that takes me back to the system. So here we have modules.
For me, just a time check. I think we are a little bit over time. If you can give kind of sense how much is left, and so audience is aware of their commitment.
Okay, so how many minutes do I have left?
No, feel free to go, keep on going. I think, but 15-20 minutes maybe we should be done.
Okay, 20 minutes. Okay, good. Okay, that's fine. So let's talk about the forms. So
yeah, thanks.
Thank you. So on the account, I'm going to open a form to show us what a form looks like, because when we are doing our customizations, it all boils down to showing the users something they can work with, and that takes us to our forms. So before we bring the forms, we need to make sure that we establish the table, the fields, the table relations, the labels on those fields before we drop this table or these fields to be able to expose them on a form. So as part of the object that we have here, when I come to user interface, we have what we call the forms. So I'm just going to open one. So on the form, we basically bring in our tables, which are called data sources. So I would work with the same cost table. So when you right click on Open Designer, for instance, this should open the cost table. And here I'm able to design what I want the user to see. So when you are designing, there is a preview pane that shows, that gives you an idea of what that form is going to look like. So I have my fields here. I have a field called the account field. I have the name field. And for our forms, we have different patterns. So because it's an ERP, Microsoft wants all the forms to have the similarity across the system. So it gives this field that we are using the same application for users. So Microsoft have defined different form patterns on the system. So when I'm creating my form, I can decide to apply Microsoft pattern, or I can use a custom pattern. So this is what a form looks like. This doesn't have a data, so I'm just going to switch my data entity so I can have some data here. So while that is coming, I'm just going to create a simple form. So to create a form, I will say add new item, come to user interface. Now, if I don't know exactly where these object type are, I can use the search pane and I will say form. This could be quicker. So here I will say KWS trainings. Then I click on add. So voila, I have my form which is created. Currently my form is blank because I don't have any design yet. So here I will specify the data source. Then I can go ahead and do my design using the graphical interface. So I can drag and drop the data source, or I can decide to right click and say new data source. So the fields that are on my table are available under the field nodes that I can use on the design. So here, like I said, I can apply a pattern, or I can decide to go ahead and have my own pattern. So I want to apply a simple list pattern. Immediately I do that, Microsoft tells me, the system tells me, okay, based on this pattern that has been selected, these are the things that need to be added to make this form a complete one. So look at this. This is a form that I can click on, and it takes me to another page that gives me much more details about this document. This is a purchase order document. Now, right here, I have what we call the action pane, which is very essential for every forms. So on the action pane, I can do my crude operations like creating a new record, deleting a record, editing, or even updating a record. So back to my Visual Studio, here it's telling me that I need to add an action pane. So I will simply right click. Then here I have different form controls that I can be applied. So the first thing I'm doing is to add my action pane so I can do other things here. When I come back to the root of the design, the next thing I want to add is a group. So I can right click and I say, now I want to add a group. Now you would see that the red lines are going one after the other. The next thing I want to add is a grid. So right click here and I say add grid. Voila. Now our form seems to be in good shape. So I'll just add the field that I want to display. I could start with the trainer type, drag and drop. The trainer, I can select multiple fields and drop them at the same time. Good. So we've just created a form, and we can also test our forms as we progress. Another thing that we can do in our projects to better arrange the object type. So when you notice here, we have our objects that are being arranged somewhere here. They are arranged based on the element or the object type. I can do the same in my project. Here I will come to D365. I'll come to options, then projects. So here I will tell the system, please organize the projects by element type. So when I do this, the next time I'm adding any objects, the system is able to create a folder automatically and add. So here I'll call this KWS training dates. So you would see that it creates a folder and add that for me. So this is done only once and it's applicable to all other projects. Now, having added all my elements, I would need to build my project for this new object to sync or to synchronize together in the system. Now, when I'm creating my objects, I showed you that there's a folder. So inside this folder, we will have our object created in our folders. So these are the two EDTs that are created. They are available here. Well, we don't really have to come here to do much things, only if there is a need to. The another thing I want to show us is we have a descriptor file here. This descriptor file simply shows our model reference when we are creating them. So I referenced two different models, if you remember. I referenced the application suite and the application platform. Then the publisher name, which showed when I was creating my my model at the beginning. So having done that, I'm going to build my project. What does build project does? By building my project, I'm simply telling the system that please build this project and create files that I can use when I'm building my deployable package. While building the project, I can also synchronize the database directly. To do that, I have to come to the project properties and tell the system, please synchronize database on build. Then I click on true, and the system is able to synchronize the database if and only if we have tables that are part of the project and contains new fields. So I'll go ahead and right click this and I say build project. So without building the project, I won't be able to see the objects, the forms that I've added when I open my application. All right, so I'm just going to move forward. So I spoke about 4 patterns, how we can create our forms, how we can bring in our data sources, which are the tables, and how we can also create fields. All right, so this is a sample of a grid. And here on my form, let's come back to the form. So here is my grid. Now I have an error. Of course, errors is our friends. So if you're a developer, you should be expecting errors. So here it's telling me that there's an error I need to correct. So there is a part of my form that needs a pattern, which I can just right click and say apply pattern, which is the quick filter pattern. So I can do this, and let's see if I have any other thing to do. So here I need to add a quick filter control. Okay, good. So here I think I can build my project again. Okay. All right, so the next thing I have here is the menu item. So the menu items are the entry point to our forms. So the form won't just display itself on the system. I need to add a menu item. So for instance, when I come back to the system here, when I come to the account payable module, for instance, and I want to access all vendors on the system, I can only access the vendors via a menu item. And behind that menu item, there is a form waiting for me. So after creating my form, the next thing I want to do is to make sure that I create a menu item, and there I can reference the form. So, okay, the project is still building. And when that is done building, I can then create a menu item and attach my form. So I believe I have 14 more minutes.
Yeah, go ahead, Komi. You can cover your presentation. Yeah, go ahead with it.
Good. Good. All right. So let's wait for this. So it's still building. So you can see that part of the thing here, we are having a data synchronization that's happening because I told the system to please synchronize when I am building. So data synchronization has completed, which means my table doesn't have any issue. The build is also completed. Good. So I can come back to my project, right click. Now I want to add a menu item. So menu item should be somewhere under user interface. If I can't easily locate it, I can simply say menu item. Now we have action menu item, we have display menu item, and we have output menu item. So we have 3 different menu items, and they all have their purposes. So display menu items are used for forms and dialogues. Output menu items are used for reports, and action menu items are used for classes. We haven't looked at reports. We haven't looked at classes. So automatically we are using our display menu item because we spoke about forms already. So I come to display menu item. So I click on AWS training. Now, if you are following me, you will notice that I'm creating a record for trainings. So I created a table called trainings. I created a form called trainings. Right? Then now I want to create a menu called trainings. Okay, so I open my designer, then I want to link the menu item to the form. So we have object type, then we have object. So the object type could be form, it could be class, it could be report, it could be query, and so on and so forth. What I want to do here is to link a form. So I would come to the object, then look for my form, which is the KWS trainings. Select this, voila. So now I have a menu item that is referencing a form. Now I would like to test this guy and see how it looks like. So we can test our form in Visual Studio by running our debugger. So to do that, I would right click on the form and set the form as startup objects. Then the project itself is already set as startup object because I have this only project here. So if I have more than one project, I have to tell the system which one should be used as my startup project. And I can also do that when I come to the solution. So you can see the startup project. So if I have more than one, I can also select it from here. So how do I start it to see what it looks like? I would simply click on the start button, and this is going to load and try to display the form in the browser for me. So do we have any concerns so far while this is loading? I want to see if I can. So here, let's launch Edge. This is much more. So the debugger actually helps developers to check or to test their development from time to time. So I wouldn't have to wait until I finish downloading, finish all the whole customizations before I can test my code. Okay, so this is coming up.
So ఇక్కడ మళ్ళీ మనం
we have any concern?
Is there any question? I think it must be by mistake. Yeah.
So my debugger is still running, I think. Okay, so it's running. Then let's see. So it's trying to show me the form, what it's going to look like by the time I present it to. Good. So this is what my form will look like by the time I present it to the user. Okay, so I think this is fine. So the edge is more better. So here I have the action pane that shows if I want to add a new record, if I want to delete, or I want to update. Let me switch to. So another thing that we can do by default, Visual Studio is able to recognize Edge as the browser when we are debugging. So I can update that somewhere here. Then I'm 365. Projects and solutions. That's okay, debugging. Okay, I think I'm back.
Yep.
Okay, that was the network. Okay. I would find that now. Okay, so I think I would just continue. I'm not able to find that yet. Okay, good. So so sometimes I have a blog. So I think I have a blog where I put how to update. I will quickly go there. Right. So let me check. You can't have everything in your head. So I come to
It's fine, no stress. I think otherwise you can
yeah.
copy the URL.
Okay, good. That's good. You're right. So I'll just copy the URL. So let's copy the URL. Thank you. So I bring it to my browser here. So because I've not logged onto the system on this browser before, I need to authenticate. So let's put the detail into consult Microsoft.com. Okay. All right. So here, this is cost table. All right. Let me update my table back to AWS training. Trainings.
I think it's not synchronized. That's why it's not coming up. But yeah, I think we got the concept here.
Okay, so the name is actually there is no S here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So here we have our table browser. So here I can decide to add record directly into the table. So when I click on new, the system generated field, some of them are already populated. So the training type here, I can say Microsoft. The trainer is Komi. The trainer type is technical. Then I click on save. So once you save, the system is able to give you a rec ID. So the rec ID comes in when I'm actually done inserting the record. Right. So I can add more if I want to. So we've been able to create a table. We've been able to create an EDTs that have been added to our tables. And also we've been able to create a form and a menu item. Now I would like to display the form to the users on the interface. So how do I do that?
Sorry to I just joined in. I want to know if you are recording this.
Yes, Robert, we are recording this and it will be available on our YouTube channel. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Just a time check, Komi. Yeah. Yeah.
So we how many minutes do we have to go?
Yeah, I think we are already like 30 minutes over, but yeah, I think what we can do is you can try to finish this topic and then we can do Q&A. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So let me add the form on the interface, then we can do Q&A. Good. All right. So I'm trying to launch the system here. So both this will all decide where we want to drop our form to be available for users. So here we have modules. Modules are things that are assigned to users based on their role or job specifications in an organization. So for the purpose of this, I want to add my form on the common module. So here, modules on Visual Studio are seen as menus. So I will come to the user interface, scroll down to menus, then I can see the different menus that are available on the system. Now, all of these menus or modules are Microsoft objects. I want to add my own object to that of Microsoft. Microsoft says my model or my object remains my object. If you want to attach anything, you have to extend my object before you can do so. So that takes us to the concept around extension. So the menu, like I said, is the common menu. I will right click it here. Then I will say add to project. I can't add to project because I said the object is different from the model which the project belongs to. So I will just say right click, then I will say create extension. Now the create extension is also not available. So what could be the reason? We say that when you are creating your model, you can reference other models so you can access objects or elements that belong to that model. Now, the common menu object belongs to application foundation. Does my model reference application foundation? I think no. So I can always update my model by coming to extension, Dynamics 365, model management, update model parameter. So I would search for the model I created, which is KWS. So this same thing that happened to me, someone asked a question in Dynamics community just yesterday, where the person is having issue. The person cannot see add to project and also create extension. So I would come here, pick my model, click on next. Then I would have to reference the same model for my menu, which is common menu. The model is what? Application foundation. Click on this, then I say next. Now, you might be asking, why don't I just pick all of this and move on with my life? It's not advisable because when you pick everything, you're simply adding things that you don't need, which might actually cause performance issues. So we pick these models only and only if we need them. So click on next, next, next. This takes a few seconds, then go. So let's come back, right click again. Now you can see that the create extension is available. So I click on create extension, then it automatically appends a suffix for me. So now Microsoft says, okay, you can go ahead and add your custom menu item. So here I will drop it under common. When you come back to the system, you will see that you have common, inquiries, periodic, and setup. The same thing here. You have, these are called submenus. So you have the common submenu. So I'm dropping it somewhere here. I can say right click and I'll say new menu item reference, or I would just come to the display menu item and I will drag and drop here. I don't think it's there. Drag it and drop it on the common. Voila. So it comes right at the bottom. If I want to put it at the front, Microsoft allows me to do that. So I can right click and I will say move first or move up. So move first will take it right to the top for me. Then this is good. So before I build the project, let's open this common. We don't have our menu item here. But before I build the project, let's make sure that the menu item has a label. So I would open the menu item designer again. Then I will go to label. So let's see. Okay, so label. So we have what we call label files. That's not the topic of today. The label file simply helped me to develop my customization that can be accessible in different languages. So here I'll just type and I call this trainings, or I can call this all trainings. So in case I would like to separate all trainings from technical trainings and functional trainings. I find my label. Okay, appearance. Good. So I can call this all trainings, then I think I'm fine. Then let's build the projects. Then I think we can then move to Q&A. Okay, so once this is done building and we go back to the interface, I should be able to see the new form that I just created. And of course, this form at the back end has a table, and this table has fields, and these fields, some of them are referencing what we call the extended data type. So I can track the progress of the building here. I think
it is building, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think we can open the question and answer session. I think so we are already over jumped the timing today for about 45 minutes.
That's fine.
We lost some time in beginning, but yeah, I think that's fine. Do you have more things, Komi, which you would like to present, or you are comfortable if we open up for Q&A after this?
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and open the Q&A.
Cool. We'll just wait for this to finish. Yeah.
Agile
You unmute, Komi, if you're from the group.
Okay, so I was actually muted. So the system is the project is done building. Now I have the all trainings that are available. I can click on it. Then you can see that I have my form which is available. So I can add records if I want to. So trainer type. This is a technical trainer. The trainer is Komi. The trainer type. So I think one of them is training actually. That's the label. So here I can call this Microsoft. Okay. So I can add more. So this is functional. This is CRB, and this is AWS. So I can decide to filter. So on. So I think we can move ahead to have a question and answers.
Any questions, guys? Anyone has any question to ask? I can't see questions in the chat window. I think there were a few which we have answered, but yeah, I think X++ and FNO development is quite big area, Komi. So thanks for summarizing this in a short period of time. Really appreciate it. Yeah. Cool. Over to you, Satya. I don't see any questions at the moment. Yeah. Thank you, Komi.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Komi. It was a very passionate and very energetic session. It was a bit over, but that's fine.
I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah, Robert. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So quick one. I think when you were about to build it also, and you said something about the models. You don't need to select all the models at once because it will be waste of resources or space or something. So I want to know, how do you know the models that you need when you're about to start a project, or you get to know them along the way? I don't know if the question is rightly asked.
Yeah, I think the question is rightly asked, and I think I will allow Rachid to. Rachid, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I can answer that. So my view is,
Thank
Robert,
you.
yeah, it's always tricky because when you start developing, you really don't know which object you will end up extending or modifying. So there are a few ways. One is definitely when you try to refer that in your code, you build your project, you get a build error. In the error message, you can see which module you should be adding the reference to. Another way is if you look in the AOT, the model name is next to the object name. So if you know, if for example, if you have to extend custable, you can look in the application object explorer that which model you should add. And I think over time with experience, people do realize that some of the application foundation, application suite, these models are like really having the core objects of the application. And so you anyway end up adding at least these 4 or 5 models in your custom models. Yeah, that's what I would like to say. The only key thing is don't add form adapter models because they are not available in tier 2 environment. So you might be able to still compile and build, but when you deploy in tier 2, it will fail because the form adapter models are basically used for unit testing. So that's a word of caution for developers. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Komi? Yeah.
No, I think you covered everything actually.
Thank you.
So and Robert, like I showed earlier, I picked only applications because I think that contains the basic things that I need. And when I came to add the common menu, I couldn't find it because I have to now check the model it belongs to. Then I came back to add it. And like Roger said, this is not something you have to do on a daily basis because when you add one model, you have about thousands of objects that belong to that. So with experience, you also know tables like ATM worker, for instance, it belongs to the personnel model. So with time, you are able to know what to add. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right, I have a question.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. My name is Colin Sikemefuna, and I got to join from LinkedIn. So my question is, apart from, so if this building environment we used, apart from this building environment, I observe Kobe use the Visual Studio. So is there any other environment like an editor we can use for this? Komi, I don't know if my question is clear.
Yeah, your question is clear. So from the beginning, we say that the development tool that is used for F&O is Visual Studio. So you can't use any other environment apart from Visual Studio.
So basically, environments, you will have development environment and build environment. So basically, the topology is divided into two. One is your build and test, and one is your development. So always prefer developing the codes in a dev machine, and then you can use your build machine to build the code. With the help of the Azure DevOps, you can have the check-in, checkouts, pipeline build. So that's a very different story, and it takes time to explain. But normally, use a dev machine to do your development, build machine to build your system, like build your code for getting the output of our deployable packages.
Does that answer, Colin? Because like the only thing we have to use these Microsoft shipped images is there is this Dynamics 365 extension installed in the Visual Studio. So if you just download Visual Studio on your local machine, you will not find that Dynamics extension. And along with that, there is a SQL server on the machine. So there is this whole set of resources pre-installed and configured by Microsoft on these VHDs. That's why they are preferred way to go. Yeah. Does that answer?
Yeah, thank you so much.
I have a follow-up question on the first question that I asked about the model. So with the models, do you have to create a model for each project that we are going to work on, or you can just create only one model and add the packages that you need, and with any project that you need, you can just extend on that project model?
You want to take that, Komi? Or you want me to answer?
All right, so let me take that. So for every client or every project, so when you talk about projects, we have the Visual Studio project, and then we have the LCS project or the client, right? Now, if you are doing an implementation, you can decide to have a model for all your customizations, right? But when you are inside Visual Studio, right, you can use just one model, maybe based on the customizations you are doing. Take, for instance, I have customizations to do that are pertaining to finance. I have customizations that belong to human resource. So I can decide and say, okay, I want to have one model for anything that has to do with finance, one other model for everything that has to do with human resource, or I can say, no, for this client, I'm using just one model, whether it's finance customizations, it is human resource customization. So it depends on the agreements with the team that is working on the project. So I think Rashid, you can go.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Komi. Yeah. So Robert, generally it's not like that you have to create one model per project. It really depends on what type of functionalities the project team is building. So generally it's a decision of the technical architect of the project. I have seen generally if you are working on, let's say, different type of modules or functionalities, then you may end up creating multiple models, but mostly it's like one model for a partner, and they can do all the customizations there. So I hope that answers. Sorry guys, just we are a way bit over time in this session. So if there are any burning questions, feel free to maybe drop them in the chat window and we can get back to you. Does that answer, Robert, your question?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Cool.
And looks like we need one more session from.
We need one more session definitely on this. Yeah. But thanks a
correct.
lot and appreciate everybody joining, and thanks Komi. Over to you, Satya, for the wrap up.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I won't take much time now. Just an announcement for the next session, which is coming on 17th November from Venkatesh. He's based in Dubai, and he is happy to share about D365 Finance overview. So feel free to join the session. We'll be sharing the registration link very soon. So you can join our LinkedIn group. All the information about our sessions will be on that group very soon. Okay, so let's end this session formally now. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining and staying till late.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you for amazing presentation. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward for the next session.
Thank you.
For me, it was
This was
very
great.
nice session. Yep.
Thank you,
very
Komi.
much.
Komi, thank you so much, Komi.
Thanks, Rajit.
Thanks, Kami. Bye.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a nice weekend, everyone. Bye.